Do aliens exist, and are they among us? Are weird creatures lurking in the darkness? Do evil entities hide in the shadows of your bedroom while you sleep? Join us as we explore all this and more on the Warped Reality Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Warped Reality Paranormal Podcast bonus episode. Okay. Happy holidays, by the way. I just want to put that out there real quick. You're probably listening to this either around Christmas or in between Christmas, New Year's, whatever, whenever I decide to put it out, okay? But, it's me, Ghost Joe, by the way, and Creepy Ken is off doing... Creepy Ken things. I don't know, take that however you want to take that. And this is a great episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the last episode, our season 6 finale, which was the Mothman episode. We had a great time making that show. We had a great time making the entire season. Okay, guys. I just want to thank everybody that helped contribute, all of our interviews and everybody. Especially Edgegrave Dave, who was on an episode, which we definitely have to do that more often. Maybe once a season, we'll do an episode with just the three of us, just talking, crazy stuff, because that was a buttload of fun. And his contributions with horrible reviews, awesome. John writes. Awesome submissions. He wasn't able to do too much this season. He's got some stuff going on, but we hope to get some more stuff from him moving forward. So a couple of weeks ago, Al Santariga, the Squatch Father, who is the founder of the Bronxville Paranormal Society, I'll have all of his links in the show notes, by the way, he had invited me to assist him in a house investigation, a paranormal house investigation, private home, and a house cleansing. It was the first time I really ever did anything like this, and it was a great experience, really. It was just great to go there and to actually help people, and that's actually when I start my own paranormal group, I'll probably have to wait until I retire, unfortunately. That's what I want to do. Of course, everybody wants to go to like the creepy, crazy, haunted places, and that's awesome. But I really want to do this to help people and to do private home investigations. If you have a paranormal problem like that, definitely get in touch with me, and I'll put you in touch with Al Santariga, because he is a professional at this. He's been doing it a long time, and he knows what he's doing. So this episode is about me and Al talking about the investigation that we had done, and it was great fun, great talk about everything, and very eye-opening and insightful. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. After that as well, Edgegrave Dave does an awesome, horrible review on one of my favorite Christmas movies. And yes, everybody, it is a Christmas movie, okay? This is not up for debate like the whole Die Hard thing. Gremlins, okay? Gremlins is a Christmas movie. I love Gremlins. I've been trying to get my kids to watch Gremlins for years now, and they still refuse for some reason. I don't know why, but eventually I'll get there. I'll get them to watch it, because who doesn't love Gremlins? Okay, the atmosphere, the Christmas vibe of it, Gizmo, and the crazy things that the Gremlins do, and Phoebe Cates. Who doesn't love Phoebe Cates? Okay, so so please check this out. It's an interview. Or a talk, I guess you could say, with me and Al Santariga about the private home investigation that we had done. And then also stay tuned after that for Edgegrave Dave's amazing, horrible review on Gremlins. Check it out. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Warped Reality Paranormal Podcast. This is a bonus episode, by the way, guys, and it's a very cool episode for me. I have a guest with me today. It's Al, the Squatch Father, Santariga, and a good friend of mine. At least I hope he's still a good friend, because I compared him to my 80-year-old father before. So I hope he's still talking to me. But he had actually invited me to assist with him on a a paranormal investigation / house cleansing at a private house in Dutchess County, New York. So, we just decided we'll get together right now and talk about it a little bit and tell our experiences. So, what's going on, Al? How you been?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Yeah, I'm trying to get through all the video stuff. I got through all of the audio. I was using 3 different voice recorders in each room because each mic was set on different frequencies. So to get through all of that stuff, it takes a little bit of time. And on one of the voice recorders, I caught a mimic, and I don't know if you remember, but the clients were telling us that the wife was saying when she's home alone, she hears the husband, and vice versa. When he's home alone, he hears her. Well, we were in the Thun's room when we first got started, and on one of the recorders, my digital recorder that runs continuously for 72 hours was the only thing I picked up. And it was sound like me whispering bastard.
Huh.
And I reached out to you and asked you if I had said that. And you were like, no, I don't believe you said bastard the whole day,
Right.
And if I did, why would I whisper? It wouldn't make any sense. But it sounds exactly like me. And that's the first time I've ever heard a mimic of me,
Huh.
Then I went through all of the video, and in the master bedroom, when you were using the dowsing rods, I caught, on my video, I caught like 5 different orbs. And it looked like one of them came out of the dowsing rod. I don't think it did, but the way it came up from below, looked like it came out of the dowsing rods. And I made sure that particular day that all of the lights were off in all of the rooms and the windows were closed. I didn't use any light on my phone when I was recording, because I didn't want to have any false positives with any orbs. If we caught anything, I wanted it to be legit, and I believe that the 4 or 5 that we caught in the master bedroom are legit. And then we caught one downstairs when the wife was using the dowsing rods in the living room with the fireplace. I caught and remember I was asking, do you like the woman in the house? And it said, yeah, but it didn't like the man in the house. And I caught one down there, but just one. And those were the only 2 rooms in the whole house that I captured any evidence in. Having gotten through, I went through all the videos, but I went through them in very meticulously. The first time I went through them, I was looking for orbs. The second time I went through them, I was looking for shadows. Now, I haven't gone through them a third time as of yet to see if I caught any EVPs on the microphones of the cameras. You know what I mean? So I still have one more round of going through all the videos to see if we captured any EVPs on the cameras, on the 2 cameras I was using when I was filming.
Right. So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah, sure,
right?
absolutely.
So you know this couple pretty well, and you've been there more than one time to do a cleansing.
Yes,
correct?
absolutely.
Now, from talking to them, they said they've been living there for like 20 years. Have they always experienced like paranormal activity the whole time? Like when did it start? And like, when did they say, you know what, we got to do something about this? Like what was going on?
I believe it started the day they bought the house, because the woman who sold them the house told him, after everything was, all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed and she got her money, you know what I mean? She said, don't worry about the ghosts. They're friendly. And he was like, what are you talking about? And she had planted on one side of the property, she had planted witch hazel trees. And she said that was to keep the spirits from the other side of that property line to come through. Now, she only did it on one side of the property because when they were walking the property, he was like, yeah, I think I'm going to cut all these trees down. And she's like, no, don't do that. I planted these here on purpose. These are witch hazels, and these are here to protect the property line from anything crossing over. And he was like, again, he was taken by what she was telling him, like all this information came out after the papers were signed, But I don't think it would have mattered because they really loved the house. It's a big house. They have a lot of property. It's in a beautiful area, Absolutely. And I think they would have bought the house no matter what. But it would have been nice to know ahead of time,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then the very first time I was there, I had a psychic read the house, and she said that she's seen a Revolutionary War colonel living in the house, and he was the one that was slapping the women. He was very abusive to women. And she said he was buried in the Revolutionary War cemetery at the end of their property line, like right on the other side of their line in between their house and the neighbor's house. And that kids from the neighborhood had gone down there with a Ouija board and opened up a doorway. And this colonel made a beeline towards their house because I believe he was attracted to the energy in the house because not only is the husband and the children Wendigo kids, but the wife has abilities as well. A little chaotic, but still abilities, So, and I think that her chaotic energy made the colonel crazy. And that's why he didn't like the women in the house. He had, at the time, it was him, his wife, two little, his daughters were both, he has twin daughters. And at one point, his son's girlfriend was living there, and they were all being abused at one point by the colonel, and I didn't know. I went there, and I did a cleansing, and I tarot the colonel. I had a premonition the night before I got to the house that I was down in the basement on a leather couch, and a shadow figure had come out of the boiler room, and ran along the wall and ran out. And I told him that when I got there. I said, I don't know what your basement looks like. I've never been here before, but this is what I've seen in my dream last night. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what the basement looks like. And, we started from the top and we worked our way down. But the first two times I was there, I wasn't there to investigate. I was just there to cleanse. Like I said, I know the family. Right. I know what they're telling me is real. They're not making this stuff up. You know what I mean? And so I went there, and once I seen the couch where the couch was laid out, it was like deja vu. I sat down on the couch and I called the colonel out, and I told him, I said, I know you're in the boiler room, and it's time for you to leave, Colonel. And we opened up the back door, and at one point, a shadow came out of the boiler room and ran along the wall and past the actual main room of the basement and into a storage room on the right-hand side, and out that back door he had that leads up to the yard. And, so then we sealed everything. We sealed the property and everything was good for a year or two. And I had told the wife, you have to create a meditation circle out in the yard facing east, with quartz crystal stones, and you had to meditate every day to bring her energy down because her energy was so chaotic, And she was doing that, and I had planted some holy relic metals on the property line, on the four corners of the property line. And I have a concoction that I make up. It's called the Aqua de Dio, which in translated means the water of God. And it's got a lot of different things in it that are purification, we use for purification tools and stuff like that. And I sprayed that around the foundation of the house to seal the house. And that worked for about a year. And I told him, I left him a lot of stuff. You know, I said, listen, you have to, I left him like white candles and sage. And I said, you got to sage once a month. And the more you do it, the better the house will feel, the less activity you'll have. You pray, you may still have some residue left in the house from the Colonel being here. And they were doing that, and the wife was meditating, and she was getting better, and everything was feeling good. And then the male client and his son started picking on the mother, and she stopped meditating, and she got rid of the meditation circle with the quartz crystals, and he stopped cleansing because, you know, most people that have asked people to come by and cleanse, after you cleanse and the house is lighter, and it felt lighter, and it felt, you know, brighter. It looked brighter. It felt lighter. After a while, they say, well, there's nothing happening. It's been, 3 months. We haven't heard anything. And they stop. And then as time goes on, the residue starts to build back up, and these things start to work their way back up. A little history on the property. According to my psychic, Cindy from Arkansas, she says the property has layers and layers of death and blood on the land, starting with Native American wars between tribes. Then it was, she said, she's seen like the French Indian wars, and then the English against the French, and the settlers against the Native Americans. And then, there were slaves on the property. So there, somewhere on the property is a slave cemetery. And eventually ending up with the Americans against the revolution, against the English in the Revolutionary War. And so there's a lot of, she says, this land tracks a lot of death because of all the blood that was on it. Because she says there's layers and layers and layers of debt and all kinds of energy there and stuff like that. And then he called me about a year later and asked me to come back again. And I said, okay. And I had Cindy read the property again. The first time, Cindy was out with back surgery, so I couldn't use her. So I used Katie Turner from the Travel Channel. And Katie's a personal friend of mine. I called her up in Canada, and she did the reading for me. She talked to the family. She walked the house with me. Second time I used Cindy, and I don't know why I had the feeling that it had something to do with slaves. I have no idea where that came from. It just felt like slaves, but I don't say anything to Cindy. I let her do her thing and let her read for herself, because she says everything has a energy signature, and she could read energy signatures, and she knows what she's dealing with. So I didn't mention anything about slaves, but then she did, and she said, you're not dealing with Americans or English or French or anything like that. You're dealing with slaves that were brought here from the islands, and you're going to have to do a whole different kind of ritual to cleanse. And she says somewhere on the property is a slave cemetery. I don't believe it's anywhere near the Colonel's proper burial, the Revolutionary War cemetery. She says because the property is so big, it was thousands and thousands of acres of farmland. So it's probably on the other side of the farm, if anywhere, way away from the Colonel, And so I went there. The second time I went there, I actually called a friend of mine, Miss Aida. She's a hoodoo practitioner, and she's originally from Cuba. Family's originally from Cuba. And since Cindy said the slaves were from the Caribbean, I talked to her, and she sent me a whole bunch of stuff to use, because what I used the first time wasn't going to work the second time in cleansing, So I went there with all kinds of different stuff. I don't know if I wrote it down. No, I don't have it near me. But I had all kinds of different stuff. I used the second time to cleanse. And again, there had one of the rooms they had set up as a Barbie room for his grandkids. Okay. And the grandkids would not go into that Barbie room. And he was, the clients were very upset because they built this room just for the grandkids, and the grandkids wouldn't go and play in it, And the grandkids said, because his daughter has twins as well, and his daughter said, the granddaughters said that there's a monster in that room. They're not going in that room. There's a monster. So then after I cleansed it the second time, and now I don't know what the kids were seeing, if they were seeing a medicine man or what do you call that? One of those voodoo witch doctors or something like that. I don't know what the kids were seeing, but they called it a monster. But I went in, I did my thing. I did everything that Miss Aida told me to do, and we cleansed the house. And the very first night the grandkids came in the house, they looked at the house. They stepped in the front door and they looked around and they felt it. And at first it was funny because while I was there cleansing and we were outside doing the foundation again, and she walked in the house to get whatever she had to get. And on her way back out, she said, "Dad, what did you guys do here today?" And he goes, "Why?" She goes, "The house feels so much lighter and brighter. Whatever you did, it worked." Now that wasn't, she was validating what she felt. But when the grandkids came in, they walked in the front door and they're very hesitant, and he said, "Why don't you go play in the Barbie room?" And they both looked up and around and they said, "Oh, the monster's gone." And they both ran in the Barbie room and just started playing. And when he called me to tell me that, it made me feel so good. I was like, oh, thank God, But that really, really made me happy. And then again, I gave him everything. I gave them everything they needed to stay on top of this and to continue the cleansing once a month. But again, like everybody, they get lazy, they get busy, they forget. And next thing 6 months have gone by, they haven't done anything. And now you're dealing with more activity in the house. And I really didn't know what to expect this time. Called Cindy, and Cindy said, "Okay, let me try to tap in, see what we're dealing with now." And she's like, "Al, you're going to be going back to this house a million times because there's so many layers of death on this property." But she said, "Let's see what you're dealing with this time." And she had a vision of a Native American chief in all his garb, all dressed up. And he told her that it was us creating the havoc in the house, The second time, they actually had poltergeist activity where stuff was flying off the counters, the kitchen cabinets were being opened, plates were being flung out of the kitchen cabinets and stuff like that. It was really, really bad. Very chaotic. Like, when you walked in the house, it was like walking into the middle of a hurricane or something, or a tornado. You just felt the energy hit you and spin around, and it was really, really bad. And so we got that done. And then this time, Cindy said it was Native American. So when I came there this time, because you were there with me, you helped me do all of this stuff. We had white sage. We used white sage. We used tobacco. We used cedar wood, and we used sweetgrass, and we burnt all of those things from room to room, and we cleansed the house out. Now, I've called him and I asked him if there's how the house was. He never called me back. He didn't pick up. He must have been working because we've been getting a lot of snow up here. So he's worked for the city, and he's probably at work plowing or something. But I haven't I haven't gotten any phone calls from him, so I'm taking that as a good sign, But
wow,
it's been an adventure, you know what I mean? And the funny thing was, when I was telling the clients, you were there, when I was telling the clients about the Native American stuff, they're like, "Oh yeah, there's a Native American burial at the top of the hill." cemetery. And I was like, oh, well, that would have been nice if he would have told me that right from the beginning. I didn't know there was a Native American cemetery up on the top of the hill, So maybe the slave cemetery isn't that far away. Maybe it's like a triangular kind of thing. It's either to the east or to the west, because the Native Americans were north, up on top of the hill, and the colonel and his family and the Revolutionary guys were south of his property. So who knows? Maybe the slaves weren't too far away on one end or the other. But it was a wild day. We were there for like 6 hours. We both felt stuff in different rooms. We both were affected by things. Why don't you talk about some of the stuff you felt in the rooms and some of the evidence you captured while you were filming?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, before I forget, let me just give a shout out to Katie Turner also, because you had mentioned her name, and I've had her on my show. She's awesome, and she helped me with a personal matter too a couple of years back, and she's awesome. So if anybody is ever looking for an awesome psychic medium, I definitely recommend Katie Turner. She's amazing. Yeah, when I got there, of course, this was my first actual real investigation, / cleansing / anything really. And, I had talked to a couple people. I'm like, well, what should I kind of expect? And for the most part, people expect nothing, don't expect anything. Just go there, do what you got to do, and don't expect anything, So I kind of went in there, like that, just, of course, always with an open mind, because that's just how I am. But beautiful house, upstate New York, awesome. And the clients were amazing. I mean, such good people, and I could tell right away they're from New York City. We could smell our own, And, but that adds to it for me, because I'm like, well, us people from New York City, we don't sugarcoat shit, we tell it how it is. And, and they're not looking like we're not from the Travel Channel. You know what I mean? Like, nobody was there with a video camera saying, oh, we're going to put this on the Sci-Fi Network. And, they're not doing it for that. They were doing it because they legitimately have, supposed paranormal things going on in their house. And they've had it for a long time, and they needed help with it. Again, great people. And, my initial part was, like you had said a little bit before, in a couple of the rooms, I was definitely getting lightheaded. And, you could say oh, well, it could be outside things, and it could be, chemicals, and, there's power lines out there and stuff like that, I guess, in certain spots. But at the same time, it wasn't that, because it didn't happen in every room. It only happened certain times and in certain rooms. And it was only when we were actually getting some kind of spikes on some of the instruments too. So it was definitely, I mean, like I said, I wasn't expecting anything, but I mean, I had, not to sound like a crazy person, but I had a great time. It was great learning how to do this stuff, and seeing, a professional as yourself, in action doing the stuff. Because I've told you, eventually I'd like to get something going too. So it was cool to be out there and helping you. Yeah, let's see. When we were doing the dowsing rods, that was the first time I've ever held dowsing rods in my life. And that was interesting,
Dowsing rods are amazing the first time you hold them. Oh my God.
It was definitely cool. One part of me is trying to say, well, it could be like the Ouija board effect, where it's like, your subconscious could be moving the stuff. But at the same time, it wasn't, I can't explain it. It wasn't that, it definitely wasn't that. And then also, I don't know why, but at one point the spirit said they were threatened by me, or I was a threat. I don't know why that came up. I don't know what that's about.
Well, you're a big dude, so maybe,
I guess, I don't know, maybe the law enforcement thing. I don't know.
You're like Horse Cartwright, you know what I mean? So, you're definitely intimidating for sure, yeah.
Who knows?
Because the family's on the small side, you know what I mean? So
the son's room, definitely a lot of heavy energy in there, and that's where we caught a lot of evidence, a lot of spikes in the instruments. Very, like, you could tell there was definitely somebody was not happy being over there. Like there was definitely some I can't say. You can't say evil energy, but bad energy, like not very nice energy, kind of negative energy. Negative is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there was, yeah. Negative. Yeah. There was definitely a negative, vibe in the son's room for sure. Yeah. Well, I thought I had all the bases covered with everything. I had brought tons of extra batteries because I know how this stuff drains batteries. And I even brought solar chargers to plug some of the cameras into directly in case the batteries died. And it was hysterical because I thought I had everything covered. And the first time I gave you the full spectrum slash infra IR camera, it's just this is you go to turn it on, and what does it say?
No
SD card
full. Yeah.
SD card. Yeah. The one thing, I didn't bring anything extra SD cards, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden the SD card was full, so we had to put that camera to the side. So then I broke out the thermal camera, which I love my thermal camera. I use it all the time, and I couldn't get it to come into focus in the house. It would not focus. It has an automatic focus of its own, number one. And number two, it has a fine focus on the outside that you can use manually. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get that camera to focus in the house, so I couldn't even use the thermal either. So that was 3 cameras right out the window as soon as we started.
Now let me ask you, have you checked that SD card since? Like, is it actually?
Yes, it's still full.
Actually, but I'm saying, like, it actually is full though, right? Like, it wasn't like, something there like made it like that, so we couldn't, do what we had to do.
Yeah, because, as soon as I got home, I checked everything, and I had no problem focusing the thermal in my home. I had the SD card still read full, so I know that card is full, and I have to get a new SD card for that camera. But here's a big but: the millimeter that I turned on, and the millimeter reads 3 different things. It's got a proximity sensor on it, it has a temperature gauge on it, and it reads EMF. In that house, the only thing that worked was the proximity sensor. The other 2 would not turn on. As soon as I got home, I checked that millimeter, and everything worked fine. I checked it before I left the house, and everything worked fine. But I checked it again as soon as I got home, and all 3 of the instruments on the millimeter worked perfectly the way they were supposed to work.
Wow.
So, it's just, it is what it is, and this is what happens when you go out, you go out in these investigations or these cleansings. You think you have all the bases covered, and you think you're all ready to go, ready to rock and roll, and the entities say, no, we're going to throw a curveball at you, and that's why I always go out old school, new school. Because a lot of the times the ITC stuff just doesn't work, or it gets drained. You change batteries and it drained the batteries immediately. Boom, boom, boom. But if you're using an old school compass or the dowsing rods or the quartz crystal pendulum, you know what I mean? They all 3 of them will pick up energy, but you can't drain them of any energy because they're not battery operated, you know what I mean? So that's why I always go old school, new school all the time.
Now, one thing that we used that a lot of people kind of find a little controversial, but we used it quite a bit, and we seem to have had quite a bit of luck with it as well. Was cell phone apps that have some of these tools on them. What is your? I mean, obviously we were using them, so you like them and stuff, and you favor them a little bit. But like, what's your opinion on them, really?
I think the cell phone apps have come a long way over the years. In the beginning, when they first came out, it was all for entertainment purposes, obviously, you know what I mean? But the ITC stuff has gotten so sensitive and it's just so complicated the way they put this stuff together with the algorithms and everything else. Long as you put your phone on airplane mode, you won't get any false positives as far as messages. It's like, you won't pick up any radio waves or anything like that, or any microwaves are going to come through or anything like that. The ones I use, I only use like 2 or 3, to be honest with you, I've used for a long time, and I've had other ITC equipment validate what they were doing. You know what I mean? I put them, when I first started using them, of course I didn't trust them,
Sure.
So I had to have other stuff out next to them. And when they're both reading the same thing, or they're both saying the same thing, you know what I mean? There's no way that app is going to say the same thing as an SB7 Spirit Box. You know what I mean? And yet I'm getting the same results. The ITC stuff validated the apps that I use. That's why I only use a couple of them. You know what I mean? But because I know the ones that I use, I've used on a lot of different investigations, and I validated them. And or I'll be with somebody who's using the same app, okay, but on a different. I'm using an iPhone, they're using an Android,
Right.
And we're still getting the same messages coming in.
Wow.
We're still, each one is validating the other,
Absolutely.
So, to me, that's validation that these things have become so sophisticated. That's the word I was looking for. They've become so sophisticated that they actually do work very well now. You know what I mean? Depending on what you're using. And depending how you're using. Now, we use 2 or 3 different apps that day, and we got a lot of different words come through, but I don't think we got anything. Maybe one time we did, I think maybe once, where we asked a question and we got a direct answer to the question. We got a lot of different kind of responses, but like not the questions we asked. You know what I mean? So I don't remember. I think there was on one occasion we did get an intelligent response, but we had so many that weren't non-intelligent that I kind of just didn't even look at any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Kind of just blew all of that off that data. I don't feel like we got enough intelligent responses from the questions we asked to validate anything that came through that day. But as far as like the ghost radar stuff goes, the ghost radar would say something's to our right, and the dowsing rods would point to the right, you know what I mean? Right. Or the periscope wand would go off if I've held it out to the right. So that I think did work pretty good that day.
Yeah, and I want to. I had said this to you after the investigation, but I wanted to say this also with the podcast is that, the one thing. I mean, everybody sees, of course, everybody sees the shows on TV, and it's all entertainment, and they go into all these creepy prisons and all these creepy places and stuff. I know in the beginning, Ghost Hunters, in the beginning stages, like the first 2 seasons or so, they were going to private houses. The Ghost Hunters people. And they were right. And to be honest with you, that whole first and second season, they hardly got anything. And they're like, yeah, listen, we didn't get anything. Like, we're plumbers. That's a plumbing issue you got. We'll take care of that for you. If anything, they got work for Roto-Rooter. But, but that's what I loved about the shows back then. I stopped watching them ever since. But the one thing that I really connected with was when the homeowner had asked a question in the dining room, and it was a very personal question.
Very personal question.
And
oh my God!
It got
you could have heard a pin drop. I was like, oh my God!
And luckily,
please get a response to this question.
Luckily,
oh my God!
She got the response that she was hoping for.
She was looking for. Yeah.
And but to me, that's what made it real for me, because I saw the emotion, and I saw the emotion in her voice and in her eyes and stuff, and just everything about it. I'm like, this is real. Like, this is.
Yeah, she was trembling. She was actually trembling.
Like, this is real stuff right here, And like, it really made me believe and really made me think, like, you know what, I do want to do this, but I don't want to go and, of course you're going to want to go to like these spooky places, but I'd want to do it to help people, and like what we were doing that day,
Well, that's what I got into it for. Yeah, I got into it to help people who didn't know where to turn for help and who were getting ripped off by frauds. And, people were scamming them out of a lot of money. I'll come cleanse your house for $300 or $500, but I want to do an investigation. Anything I find, I want to put on my, they're not really there to help the clients. They're there to make a name for themselves. That wasn't my goal. I when I started, I was like, I'm here to help people. If you need my help, reach out to me. I don't charge for any of my services. If you want to give me a small donation for gas or something like that, I'll be more than happy to take it. But I don't charge for my services. And I never have. I never will. And that's why I got into it. And of course, going to those spooky places is very exciting, and, long as you can keep yourself safe from any attachments, last thing you want to do is bring home something dark or negative to your family. But there's, it's an exciting field, and it's when you get confirmation for something from the other side, it's very exciting, And like you said, she asked a very, very personal question, something I would have never asked because I wouldn't want not to get the response that she was looking for. But she got her response, and it made her day, and oh, thank God. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank God. Yeah. I was like, oh God, I would never ask anything like that. But yeah,
I know I was like trembling, saying like, oh, please.
Oh yeah. Me too. Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, please let her get the response she's looking for. And she did. And I'm happy for her. And she needed that, and it made it better, and maybe now her family that was there can move on, and she can move on, because we really wasn't there for her family members. We were there for the Native Americans who are not happy that all these houses are built on their land, and and yada yada yada. But I mean, it worked out for her, it worked out for us, and it was a very draining day. It was a long day. We did a lot of stuff, and I didn't get anything on the SLS camera at all that day. No stick figures anywhere whatsoever. So, I mean, it felt like to me there was 1 or 2 rooms in the whole house, maybe 3, that these things were taking residence in. And the rest of the house was pretty quiet. Although, they're hearing stuff all over the house. Things getting thrown in the kitchen, things downstairs, and hearing somebody walk up and down the steps, and gurneys being rolled down the hall, and doorknobs being shaken, and all of that stuff. And we didn't get any of that. And I felt like maybe because we're both pretty big guys, maybe we were very intimidating. I don't know. But I felt like they were hiding from us as much as they could. I really did. I felt like they were hiding from us or laying low. Not so much hiding, but laying low. But we were finding them with the instruments that we were using, whether it was ITC stuff or old school stuff. You know what I mean? We were finding them. But all of those little jingle bells that I hung up all around the house, none of them rang the whole day. You know? Yeah. So, no. I mean, again, and it doesn't sound like much, but when if something is hiding from you, an orb would have went into the curtains or something and moved those curtains, that bell would have rang, you know what I mean? And then we would have drawn our attention towards those curtains, and then maybe one of the ITC devices would have picked up the electromagnetic energy in the curtains. But you know, little things like that are big helps. I love my old school stuff as much as I love my ITC stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, it was definitely, now actually, yeah, let me ask you about that too, because that just came to my mind also. When you said that the orb could have, like, I know obviously the orb is, you know, a spirit, but is it a physical thing? Like you said, it could have moved the curtain. Could that happen? Like, I always just see orbs as like light almost, you know, like a...
Yeah, but light is energy, you know what I mean? And that energy, with the motion of it going from one direction to another, I think it could move that curtain ever so slightly where those bells are so small and so sensitive that it could have rung it. You know what I mean? If you were using a big, heavy, like a cowbell kind of thing, maybe not, you know, but those little jingle bells that I use are so sensitive because they're so light. Any kind of motion could set them off. But yet, you know, as light as they were, they never rang the whole day, any of them, you know? The same thing when I use balls. Like sometimes I'll put balls down on the ground, you know what I mean? And to see if they move, if they roll or whatever. But I use heavy lacrosse balls, so they don't roll. You know what I mean? You really have to push them to make a lacrosse ball move because it's a heavy, solid ball. You know, so I'll use them, and if they move, I know something with a lot of force moved them. And they didn't just roll because I walked by. You know. And the same thing with the cat balls. You know, when you put the cat balls on a dresser, and if they start lighting up, you know, somebody actually has to be there touching those things. You know, so you know, there's a lot of little things, a lot of little tricks we use to try to bring things out and find stuff. I've tried the flashlight experiment a bunch of times. I've never gotten one to work. Not yet. And I've been doing this for a long time and I still haven't gotten one to go off yet. But, I've done the Estes experiment a lot and that really does work. You know what I mean? So, that's pretty cool stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe next time we go out, we'll do something like that, you know? Yeah, they got a lot of new gadgets out, but they do the same thing as the old stuff. You know what I mean? They just give it different names. You know, the people who are creating this stuff are trying to make money, so they give it different names, but it does the same thing. Yeah. Like I said, I told you that day, I got 4 backpacks and 4 giant Tupperware things full of equipment. You know what I mean? Depending on where I'm going or what I'm using. And half of the time I don't get to use half of it because I got so much of it, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I mean, I know you had said that you haven't talked to them yet to see the prognosis, really. But this was your 3rd time cleansing the house?
Yes, but this is my first time doing an investigation. And that's the reason I did the investigation, because Cindy said, I think if you do an investigation, we can put this house to rest. Okay. I don't know why she felt that. I called her today and I was talking to her today, but then company dropped in on her. So she had to cut me short, but I didn't even get a chance to tell her about the investigation. That's how brief we were on the phone for. But I don't know why she felt like an investigation would put that house to rest. But, if she's telling me I should do an investigation, I do an investigation because she's always spot on with all of her stuff. You know what I mean? I've used her, I've tested her many times and I've used her for forever. And she's always, no matter what she says, how crazy the stuff she says. And we break her chops being, guys from New York and she's from Arkansas and she says some crazy stuff and we break her chops. We laugh. We have a good time busting her chops. But at the end of the night, when we check all the boxes, she's spot on. Yeah.
So you had said that, like I was saying, this was your third time. Is that like a normal thing? Like that you would have to go back there and keep doing cleansings? Like, could that happen? I mean, forever? I mean, having to keep going back there and doing cleansings, or, I mean.
Well, the whole goal is to release what's ever there and let it move on to the other side, right? Most of the times when you go to a home that has an issue, it just has an issue with one particular thing. Maybe the family who built the home, or people who lived in it for 50 years, or something to do with the land. Like I said, this particular house is built on this giant farm that had all these different layers on it. And if you do the cleansing continuously once a month, like I say, from top to bottom, and I mean from top to bottom, from the attic to the basement and everything in between, and you put a day aside to do this because that house happens to be a particularly big house. You put a day aside to do that and you do it religiously once a month. The activity, you will get any residual energy that's left there, whether it's negative or positive, you'll get that energy out eventually. Eventually that energy will move on, especially the negative stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's what you're doing. You don't want to move out or push out positive stuff. You want to push out negative stuff. And, but you have to stay on top of it. You just can't do it for the first 3 months and then not do it for the next 9, It doesn't work that way, because sometimes if the same thing came back in, like if the colonel would have came back the second time, I'm sure he would have came back with a vengeance because we had driven him out, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the colonel never came back, thank God. We put him to rest. So, and as far as I know, the slaves haven't come back either, So now we're just, the Native Americans, it may be a tougher cleanse because they've been on that land for thousands of years. You know what I mean?
Right.
They may not want to leave. They may not want to move on, Hopefully they do. And hopefully there are no more occurrences, But according to Cindy and Katie Turner too, it's not just their house that has all of this stuff going on in it. It's the houses on either side. It's the houses across the street, the houses behind it. As a matter of fact, he told us a story where the woman who lives in the house behind him seen the colonel come out of the cemetery and go into her basement. Right after those kids did the Ouija board stuff, So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's every house in that development, because that development is like 1,000 acres, but those houses in that particular area on that block, say, a lot of those houses on that area in that neighborhood are having ill effects from entities. But, most people are in the denial. You know what I mean? They don't tell anybody about it, or if they don't know what to do, who to call. Like he had the house blessed as soon as he moved in, because the lady who sold him the house told him there was a ghost. And, that may have given him a grace period for a little while. And then the residual worked its way back in, I don't think he had issues with the. I don't know if I recall, if I remember correctly, he didn't have any issues with the colonel until the kids went to the cemetery and played with the Ouija boards. So
it's like a bad horror movie, man. You don't like you don't. I mean, look, and now I told you I had a Ouija board experience. I haven't touched it in over 20 years. Because of my experience that I had, scared the hell out of me, and I'm like, nope, never doing this ever again. But at the same token, I actually have a friend that has a paranormal investigation group in the UK, and they predominantly use Ouija boards on every investigation. So I feel like it's, you have to know what you're doing. It's never like, it shouldn't be a fun thing. You know what I mean? Like it's not a toy. You know what I mean? So I think you just have to know what you're doing. Really.
No, I mean, have you ever listened to Father Long or Reverend Long? He's got a show on TikTok.
No,
he's a paranormal. Oh man, he's amazing. He's worked for the Archdiocese. He's a demonologist. He's done like 30 exorcisms, and he talks about Ouija boards all the time. And he explains how when you put your hands on that planchette and you're asking an entity to come through you to move that planchette, you're giving them permission to possess you. Because you know what I mean? He said, and that's the worst possible thing to do is they need that permission. And you're giving it because you want them to move the planchette and everybody's got their hands on it. You know what I mean? And he says that's the worst possible thing you can do. And, I've known so many people who've had so many bad experiences with Ouija board. I don't touch them. I've never touched them. I don't know why I never touched them. My family is a paranormal family. They did seances and stuff like that. And they had like crystal balls and stuff. I had an aunt who was a white witch and one who was a black witch. And, but for some reason they've never used Ouija boards. And I don't know what it is about them that from the very first time they came across my presence, I didn't want anything to do with it. It just gave me a really, really negative feeling, and I just wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't do it. I didn't want to be in the same room with it. I just want nothing to do with it. And when I get that kind of feeling that something is that dark, I just, and then, like I said, and this is not knowing why I feel like that. And I get that same kind of vibe when I take photographs into mirrors. You know what I mean? Like it takes a lot for me to take my camera and aim it at a mirror and take a photograph in the mirror. You know what I mean? Right. Not because I'm afraid of what I'm going to see in the picture behind me or anything like that, but just I don't know what it is. I don't know. I've never had a bad experience with a mirror ever, but there's just something about mirrors that freak me out. I mean, I still do it. I have to force myself to do it, but I do it. But it freaks me out. And Ouija boards are the same way. It just, no, there's just, and I've heard so many bad experiences with Ouija boards that there's just no way. I mean, I got a partner at work who told me a story about a Ouija board and him and his brother, he had a twin brother, and his friends were all hanging out in the basement playing with the Ouija board, messing around, thinking it was, a game, not taking it seriously. Until the basement window blew in and just exploded in on them, and something came in, like a rush of something came in, and everybody dropped what they were doing and ran out of the goddamn house. And one of his friends actually got possessed, and they did all kinds of exorcisms on him or whatever. Now, I don't know who did the exorcism, but apparently whoever did it couldn't cleanse the entity in him. Eventually, this guy ended up committing suicide, killing himself because he couldn't live like that anymore. You know what I mean? And when he told me that story, he was like shaking, like, dude, don't play with Ouija boards. I'm like, no, you don't have to tell me, bro. I know they're no joke.
Yeah, actually, that was one thing that we didn't mention also that I'd like to point out to people as well, is that, you know, this family is, I mean, I didn't get to meet the kids weren't there, but in the room that we felt the most stuff going on, the boy that has that room actually had his mirrors covered. He actually had them, he had a sheet over it. You know, so this is no joke. You know, like these people wholeheartedly believe that this is going on. You know, like I said before, they're not trying to, you know, get anything out of it or trying to play any kind of games or anything like that. Like, this is real, you know, and that's another thing that kind of, it got me with it, you know. I'm like, oh wow, so this is like, you know, like when you talk to somebody, it's like, oh yeah, like one person in the house sees everything, and then the other person's like, you're crazy, you know. But no, the entire family had experiences in this house,
and the entire they've been there 30 years, and the entire family, nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to be there. The wife spends 90% of her time at her mother's house. The husband spends 90% of his time at work. The kids are always at the daughters are grown and moved away, and the son has taken a job with he's a fireman in the city, so he's always at work now too. So he's not there anymore either. You know, it's just I guess on weekends when he's off or whatever. But nobody wants to be in the house. They got this big, beautiful house, and nobody wants to be in it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it blows my mind. Like, but you can't, but because they're greaseballs from the city, they're thick-headed, and you can't drive them out of it either. You know what I mean? They're not leaving. They're not leaving. And I asked him, I said, when you retire, where are you going to go? And he's like, where am I going to go? This is it. This is where I'm going to go. You know, where am I going to go? You know, he's not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere, but neither one of them want. The only times they want to be there is when the house feels good, you know, and then they tend to spend more time in the house together, you know. But like, I can't imagine living like that, not wanting to be in my own house, you know. My house is my kingdom, you know, is my castle, and
absolutely.
It's where I decompress. It's where I play my guitars and I go off into the universe. You know what I mean? And it's just where, you know, this is my safe space, you know? So, but thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
And you'll have to, when you find out, you know, how everything is and stuff like that, and you get an update, let me know. Give, you know, that phone number that I gave you a while back, give that phone number a call, leave a voicemail, and I'll play that, you know, so I could tell everybody else, you know, how everything is going. But
yeah, and I'll let you. I'll keep you up to date when I finally get a chance to go through those videos, just for the audio, because I use two different cell phones, and they're both set on different frequencies, so you never know what you're going to catch. That's why I try to use as many things that are set to different frequencies. You know what I mean? The more frequencies you're using, the better your odds of you catching something. I did want to just say one thing though. You asked me a question when we were outside, and you were like, "How come you didn't play any of those EVPs in real time for the family?" And I said, I don't know if you remember what I told you, but I said, because the last thing I want them to hear is the word demon in their own house. Yeah, and that's why. I mean, I told them when he asked me to play, and I was like, "No, I want to go home. I'll put the headphones on. It'll be nice and quiet. I could listen to it and really pay attention and timestamp everything." You know, it's true that I do all of that stuff, but it was really I was bullshitting him too in a way, because the last thing I want him or his wife to hear is the word demon. You know. And then you got to convince them that it's not a real demon, that it's a negative entity trying to scare you as a demon, you know? Right. So, I'm not a big proponent of playing EVPs back to clients in real time. I want to hear them first myself, and then I'll pass the information along, you know?
I mean, plus there's always the chance of, the big chance of, auditory pareidolia, where you think you're hearing something, or you're convincing yourself that you hear something that it might not actually be saying what you think you're hearing, so you have to really listen to it good and put it through software and try to isolate it. And, you really have to go through it, much better than just playing it for the person right away. So yeah, I definitely get that. And actually what you had just said also with the demon thing, I was actually going to mention that with the Ouija board thing, where, my buddy that does this in the UK, he said that more times than not, whenever they're in whenever they're in a haunted location and they're doing it, a lot of times the Ouija board will spell out demon or devil or something like that. And most of the time, they'll go on, they'll keep asking it questions. They'll be like, you're not a demon, are you? And then eventually it'll be like, no, because they're trying to scare people out. They don't, in those places especially, they don't want us there, they don't want you to be
absolutely.
there. Absolutely. So, so they try and scare you away. But but at the same time, you never know, because demons have been known to lie. That's what they do best.
Yeah, that's all they do is lie.
They could say, I'm a demon. No, I'm not. But they could still really be a demon.
Of course they could.
You never really know.
Yeah, unless you have a really good psychic and think she can feel the energy and they say, okay, you're playing with something you should be playing with, get out,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's times when I'm researching things on my computer for another podcast episode, and it's always when I'm like, researching stuff about demons or researching something about evil stuff, and I'll be sitting there, and all of a sudden I get like this really bad feeling, like this really bad chill and this really bad feeling, and I'm like, you know what? I'm turning this off for the night. I'll do this another night.
That's a good. Absolutely. That's your body. That's your guardian angel telling you're getting too close to something you shouldn't be messing with, and it's time to put it away. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. I don't mess with demons. They're above my pay grade. Right. I have no desire to go and try to do an exorcism on somebody. I hand that off to the professionals. Sure. I give them numbers of people I know, or I'll call somebody and set them up with somebody to have that done. But I don't assist. I don't want to be there. I don't want nothing to do with it other than passing that information along from one or the other, and that's it. Yeah. I don't need to get on some demon's radar. You know what I mean? No, thank you.
All right, Al. So again, thank you so much, and I'll definitely talk to you soon. And next time you're going on, if you need help again, or like I said, I'd definitely love to go on a cryptid investigation, and stuff like
absolutely.
that. That would be amazing. So
yeah, without a doubt. As soon as the weather breaks, we're in the deep freeze now. Yeah,
and we're just getting started.
As soon as the weather breaks,
we're just getting started.
Yeah, yes. When the weather breaks and. In the spring, you will be the first person I call. I promise.
Awesome. That's awesome.
You got it,
thanks
brother.
Thanks a lot, Al. All right. Have a great night.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Horrible reviews with Edgegrave Dave. Ha ha! It is one of Edgegrave Dave's favorite times of the year. The weather outside is bone-chilling cold and frightful, and all of the graves that I have dug with my dirt-filled shovel have been nothing short of delightful. 2025 has been quite the year for Edgegrave Dave. I have gotten to share a lot of first-hand experiences that have carved my path into the horror fan that I am today, and I also got to cross some blood-soaked items right off of my bucket list. Like being able to visit and experience at Monroeville Mall, where Dawn of the Dead was filmed, and being able to talk about my first harrowing experience caught on film with that return to Oz, which really creeped me out. Even Garfield's Halloween special, which was the feeling that I was expecting when I was sick and my daddy brought home A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, which I got to tell about 90% of that cast that was in Weston Hills Sanitarium at that Monster Mania. Well, there's another film that we got to discuss, and that was the 40th anniversary of Teen Wolf, which is the first time that I got to see a werewolf on screen. And not only did that film star Michael J. Fox, it also shared the very same year as another monumental movie he was in Back to the Future, which shares some history with what we're gonna discuss, guys. Every kid from the 80s and back in the day knows that there are 3 rules that you have to abide by, and these rules have been passed down through generations of cinematic history, and those rules are as follows. Always keep them away from bright light. Sunlight will kill them. Never get them wet. That's no water to drink, and don't give them a bath. And the third rule, no matter how much they scream, no matter how much they cry, never, under any circumstances, feed them after midnight. Of course, the film that I'm talking about is 1984's, I'm going to call it Christmas movie, Gremlins. Although that film did come out in June of that year, and it was a huge film for both Warner Brothers and Steven Spielberg's career. I could literally spend 2 full segments discussing the history of this movie and the cinematic importance that this movie has. But what I am going to focus on is really how much that I enjoyed the movie and how much value that it has in its rewatchability. It really is a truly great movie for the holidays, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, it does have its share of problems, though. And one of those problems that the film had is that it was rated PG. Now, this was 1984. There were 2 films during this time frame. There was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and there was Gremlins, both rated PG. A lot of people didn't really think of it. Then you had a lot of angry letters that were coming into the MPAA, and Steven Spielberg, who is an executive producer, was receiving them. You see, both of these films had just a little bit too dark and horror elements for PG, but it was light enough that they wouldn't think of calling it rated R. So just 2 months later, after some angry letters, Steven Spielberg helped to create PG-13 with the MPAA. And the third film that helped to seal it was 1985's Back to the Future, when between some of the language and some of the underlining themes, many movies that came after that shifted to that PG-13. So we have these films to thank, and Gremlins was a huge precursor in this because of its level of horror. So it is at this time, spoiler alert, guys, you have been warned from this Edgegrave warning. The poster for this thing, just looking at the poster for the theatrical release, guys, you have a box and there's a little furry, kind of cute creature that's sticking out of it. This seems like it could be a pretty light movie, guys, right? Well, at the very end of this review, I'm going to tell you what both the VHS cover and VHS poster look like, because they gave everything away. Talk about spoilers. There was no alert for that one. Ugh. Credits to this film. This film was directed by Joe Dante, written by Chris Columbus, who did one of my other favorite Christmas movies in Home Alone, starring Zach Galligan, Phoebe Cates, Hoyt Axton, Polly Holliday, Francis Lee McCain, and Howie Mandel as the voice of Gizmo. This film also had Corey Feldman, who did star in Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter of that year. He later went on to make Steven Spielberg's Goonies the following year, and it also had a very young Judge Reinhold, who was in this movie before Beverly Hills Cop of that year. So the basic plot of this movie is that we have Randall Peltzer, who's an inventor, and not a very good one. Almost everything that he makes in the house breaks. There's a coffee maker that he made that turns things into sludge. The orange juice spills all over the place. And let's not forget the bathroom buddy, where if you want toothpaste or shaving cream, you better run the other way. And he goes into Chinatown looking for a Christmas gift for his son Billy, who happens to work at the local bank. And while he's working at the local bank, Mrs. Deagle, who really does remind me of the Wicked Witch of the West before she becomes the Wicked Witch, really hates the dog and tries to get him. Quite a lot like Toto, actually, from The Wizard of Oz. Now that I'm thinking about it, there are some similarities there. So while Randall is in Chinatown and he goes into an old shop in a back alleyway, he's looking around for artifacts for his son when he hears a sound of a creature that is covered in a cage. And it looks a little cute, almost like a cross between, I'm going to say, a koala bear and a Furby, but something not from this world. The old man refuses to sell him. That's until his grandson secretly tells him to wait outside because they really do need the money. So as Randall Peltzer is leaving with the Mogwai, that's when there's a little flashback audio of the 3 rules that we just discussed. I really like the pacing of this movie because the film opens up with the father while he's in Chinatown. He's telling a story. All this has happened before, and you don't know where he's going yet. And then it cuts to the whole town. I love the little Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark logo that they have for the DJ, by the way. You get to go to this town, and you see a precursor and foreshadowing of all of the characters and types of personalities that we're going to be interacting with. So you sort of get to know them before he comes home with the Mogwai. He names the Mogwai Gizmo, and when Billy opens it up, a cute little furry creature that's brown and white with almost like bat ears and sort of like monkey paws and feet and a cute little wet nose comes out. He makes the cutest little squeaks and sounds. The rules are spoken, but you don't really think about them right away. He's reading a comic book, he's singing, they're having a great time. And then Corey Feldman, thanks, Corey, right after his fight with Jason Voorhees, accidentally gets him wet. All of a sudden, these cute little fur balls are popping out of Gizmo, but he's very upset and he's screaming and crying. Something terrible is starting to happen. Well, the little creatures that are coming out don't have the same kind of cuteness that Gizmo had, and we learn that they multiply with water, and one of them has a little mohawk, which they call Stripe. These creatures are so bad and mischievous already, and they're torturing Gizmo, and they put him up on a dartboard, they're throwing darts at him, and all that they want to do is eat. That's like their sole purpose in life, is just to eat, and since you can't feed them after midnight, Billy at one point in his room in the attic, really awesome pad, by the way, looks at the clock. It's not midnight yet, so let's give him some chicken. By the way, the chicken's in the fridge, and my wife pointed out it wasn't even covered with tin foil or anything. They're going at it, eating grossly disgusting with this chicken. You can see the pieces and all the slime coming out of the mouth while they're eating, and then something happens. Almost like something out of Alien, and I'm gonna say, yeah, alien type cocoons that are like eggs are all of a sudden in Billy's room, and it looks like something is changing. He had taken one of the multiplied furry mogwais back to the school where Corey Feldman goes to, and the teacher is running some tests. He actually gave a blood test, but he manages to eat after midnight too, and he explains that the creature's going through a series of metamorphosis. Well, it's not long until this is the really scary part of the movie, kids. Everything else is kind of comedy and mystery and fantasy at this point. When these cocoons hatch, hatch, that's the part that reminds me of being 5 years old. I was very scared to look at the screen. It's animatronic, it's puppet, but it's freaking scary and awesome at the same time. They come out with these reptilian, scaly creatures who've completely lost all of their fur, save for Stripe's little mohawk, and they're ready to get busy. There's a whole crazy kitchen scene where these guys are out for vengeance. All of a sudden, there are some slasher elements, guys. They're throwing plates at Billy's mother. They're getting very, very dangerous. She takes a kitchen knife while "Do You Hear What I Hear" is playing, and she throws one right into the microwave. That one bursts, and you have a couple of horror elements there. Quickly, Stripe escapes from the window, and now the whole town is going to be wrecked with these things. Now, there are these horror elements that I was talking about, but there's a lot of comedy too. We have a whole bar scene. They all have different personalities, but in this bar, it's one of the absolute best scenes. They dress up, they're playing poker, they're shooting each other, they're hanging from the fan. I mean, you sort of love the creatures at the same time, but you're also a little uneasy about the creature. And Gizmo refused the chicken after midnight, and he wants to stay the same. Now, this Stripe Mogwai, which we're going to call Gremlins at this point, has a brilliant idea. How do you multiply real quick? By going to the YMCA, of course, and jumping into a pool of water. Oh no, these creatures are everywhere. This film really does a great job of shifting between fantasy elements, comedy elements, and of course the horror elements. You're always in a state of suspense. You're sort of cringed out and in disbelief while being horrified and laughing at the same time. It does a really great job of that. There's also a little bit of dark human emotion in these movies of two characters. You have Billy's love interest, Kate, that tells a really sad story about why she hates Christmas, and Mr. Futterman, his neighbor. This was the 80s, guys, so there's a little bit of racism going on. He talks about how he hates all foreign parts because of World War II, about how gremlins got into the machinery. And that's how we actually get the name. The movie has a phenomenal job with the special effects. These are all animatronics. Looks like there is a little bit of stop motion at this time. And the ending has such a gross out, but kind of funny at the same time scene. I love the ending, trying so hard not to spoil that for you. There's a lot of rewatchability. The graves that I'm going to give this one, I am dying to give it 4 out of 5 graves, but I'm going to have to give it somewhere between 3 and 3/4 of a grave out of 4 out of 5. What the hell kind of math is that for the end of the year? So close to 4 graves, guys, but some of the issues that I've always had is we're feeding them after midnight, right? I mean, what time zone does that fall into? Like, is 12:01 too late? Is 11:59 okay? And what if you're on the West Coast? What if you're on the East Coast? I mean, they don't really specify stuff like that. Oddly enough, we get into that conversation a little bit in Gremlins 2. If the creature had such a mischievous history, why on earth would the grandson sell this creature to Randall Peltzer? I mean, did nothing that his grandfather told him stick? I do like the lessons that they do teach you about following rules and about how something that could be innocent could also be extremely dangerous. I mean, hey, it helps you to raise your pets and to raise your children, right? So that's a good thing that it did. But a lot of these things you can't really get into too much because you just got to leave it to fantasy. So my personal experience, I did get to meet Zach Galligan at Monster Mania in 2018. What was really cool is that he was a Ghost fan. I was wearing a Ghost Band t-shirt at the time, and he had told me that he would be interested if there ever was a Gremlins 3. And it just so happens that Warner Brothers, in the year 2027, we're going to get a Gremlins 3. Steven Spielberg, Chris Columbus is attached, and the biggest question is going to be, are they going to be animatronic? Now, the whole animatronic CGI thing, if they're mixed, it could really work. I'm just going to leave it at that. We've had so many legacy sequels, everything from Beetlejuice and Cobra Kai and things in between. It's been a tremendous time period of the last couple of years. There is currently an HBO Max Gremlins cartoon. I personally wasn't into it a little too much. It was a little cutesy. And it takes place when the grandfather was a boy, and they called him Gizmo. I mean, he wasn't named Gizmo yet. That happened in 1984. And we also got to talk about this, guys. You think that Kingston Falls has a couple of things in common with Hill Valley from Back to the Future? You got that right. Turns out that the movie used the exact same Universal back lot, Courthouse Square, to film many of the scenes. The whole town of Hill Valley in Kingston Falls was redesigned from Gremlins to Back to the Future. You get to see the movie theater where Marty pops back into 1985 from. That movie theater was also used in Gremlins on the same street. Not to mention that Gremlins started out as a Twilight Zone episode from the 60s, which later was a movie from the 80s. Well, the very first episode of the Twilight Zone was filmed in that Courthouse Square in the Universal backlot, and you can see it. So, hope everyone has frightfully good holidays. And by the way, that poster that we talked about, when it came out on VHS, they put Stripe right on the cover. How about a little to be desired, guys? All right, Ghost Show Creepy Ken. Hope that there's no gremlins in your garage. Edgegrave out, stay warm.
Well, thanks for joining me on this awesome holiday bonus episode, guys. Thanks to Al Santariga for joining me on this episode and allowing me to join him on this paranormal investigation. It was amazing. You can find out more info about Al and everything that he does at BronxvilleParanormalSociety.com. He's awesome. Definitely check out everything that he's involved in. Also, thanks to Edgegrave Dave for his awesome, horrible review on Gremlins. And thanks to all of our guests this season as well. Tony Rathman, Robert Guffey, Preston Dennett, and our very own Edgegrave Dave. From vampires to Amityville, Mothman, cursed movies, and haunted Hollyweird, we hope you guys enjoyed this awesome haunted paranormal ride with us. You can find all of our episodes, an awesome blog, paranormal news, and a submit your experience section, all at our amazing website, warpedrealityparanormal.com. From Creepy Ken and I, Ghost Joe, enjoy the holidays, have a happy new year, and we will be back in mid-January for season 7, where you're definitely not going to want to miss this because we delve into some uncharted territories, especially that I've ever done. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Stay tuned for more horrible reviews with Edgegrave Dave. John Wright is definitely going to be sending us some stuff as well. Thank you to all of our awesome fans and our listeners and everything. Check us out, warpedrealityparanormal.com. You can check us out on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all that great stuff. So have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the holidays. We'll see you in mid-January. Later. Thank you for listening to the Warped Reality Paranormal Podcast, and thank you to all of our guests and contributors that help make this show possible. For more information on the show, to listen to every episode, read paranormal news, or to submit your paranormal experience, check out warpedrealityparanormal.com. You could also email me at ghostjoeny@gmail.com. The Warped Reality Paranormal Podcast, uncovering the unseen.